You are listening to the Self-Trust Solution Podcast with Dawn Leday, episode number 111. Welcome back. Today, I am beyond thrilled to bring you a conversation that could completely change how you think about stress. Joining us is Dr. Susie Castellanos Hansley, a keynote speaker and expert in science-based stress solutions. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by stress, doubted your ability to manage it, or viewed it as a personal failure, this episode will flip that narrative. Dr. Susie is here to explain why stress is not your enemy, but instead a feature of your humanity that you can learn to work with, not against. She's sharing actionable tools to reset stress in seconds, insights on how to celebrate tiny wins to rewire your brain, and a whole new perspective on achieving your goals without the burnout. Let's dive in and discover how to make stress your ally in living your best life. Welcome, Dr. Susie. We're so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm glad to be here.
So you're the go-to speaker for audiences seeking smart stress solutions. What people often get wrong about stress?
Well, what we get wrong about stress, and this used to be me too, is that it was a personal failure. So most of my life, I didn't realize I was really stressed out. It just kind of something I lived with. And I remember when I was getting my PhD and being an academic in a really high stress situation, I was stressed out. And what I thought was that this was my failure to manage myself. What I had learned really from society, and I think a lot of us have learned this, is that we're not supposed to be stressed out. You're supposed to be able to just handle things, do everything you need to do. But if you're stressed out or anxious or afraid, that it's your failure to handle your stuff. And I think that was the biggest thing for me when I learned that it's not about a personal failure to handle stress. It's that we never learned that there's a whole science behind stress.
So how did you learn about this science of stress? And what was kind of your biggest surprise?
What I learned about it, or when I learned about it, was about 3.5 years ago, almost 4 years ago. So it was early 2021. I had completed my certification as a life coach, I believe from the same school you did, Dawn, the life coach school. And I was ready to go out there and be a coach. I am now a speaker, but I wanted to be a coach. And what happened is that I had learned from my coaching certification that thoughts create our feelings. So if we can just manage our thoughts, then we can feel how we want to feel. Well, that wasn't the case. I was going out there trying to create new business, because this is the thing nobody ever tells you, that you think, oh, I'm such a good coach, or I'm such a good speaker. And that means then everyone's going to come to me. No, you have to learn how to sell and be marketing, et cetera. There's a lot of business involved, right? So it was when I was doing that I was finding myself so anxious. And I am somebody who's a natural speaker. I love connecting with people. There was all this anxiety happening. Part of it, I think it was because of COVID. And I was listening to a talk on Clubhouse, an audio app, which at the time used to do these group talks and people would present. Somebody was talking on anxiety, and I went to listen to it, and I suddenly realized he's talking about me. And I raised my hand and I asked him, wait, is it possible to have anxiety or trauma? Because he was talking about trauma and not knowing. He's like, yeah, because it's the water you swim in. And so after that, me being a PhD kind of person, that I'm a smart high achiever, I like to figure things out. I went and did all the research. I got really great trauma therapy. I learned about all these different modalities and all the different ways people are talking about trauma and stress and the nervous system. And that's when I learned that there really is a science to stress, that there's physiological things that impact why we have stress. And trauma is a version of that, where we have a stress response and we don't get to adequately recover from it. That creates trauma. But the initial stress stuff is meant to be there to protect us. And that, I think, is the biggest surprise that I got. The biggest surprise I got is society's telling me there's something wrong with you if you're anxious or stressed out or afraid. You should be able to handle it. Well, the reality is that our physiology, thanks to hundreds of millions of years of evolution, we are designed to be scared of death, to avoid death. And so most of the time, we are supposed to be in the wild worried about things that could be real death threats. And once I understood that, and then I understood how that translates to modern life, that what happens is when you are an infant, you come out of the womb, you cannot control your own emotions. You have to rely on your caretakers to do that, to co-regulate you, all those kinds of things. And when I discovered that if they don't co-regulate you well because they got their own stuff, you're going to grow up feeling scared all the time and scared of your emotions. And that's really what happens with a lot of us. You know, we have parents who love us, but they may not know how to really help us with our emotions because our society says emotions are a problem. That's a sign of weakness. And so I think that's been the biggest surprise is realizing what I like to call our operating system. Those emotions are not bugs in the system, they are features. Because we get triggered, that's why we're here. Thank you to 500 million years of evolution. And once I figured that out, it was like a light bulb moment because all this time I had been beating myself up as like, this is a personal failure. And then once I realized, oh my God, it's not a bug, it's a feature, and I can't override it, that's when I was like, oh, then I want to learn how to work with it. And so that's really where so much of my work has come in to really understand. And that goes into then understanding not just the physiology of stress of why we go into fight, flight, freeze, because basically from the one cell amoeba all the way up to us, we are constantly checking, am I safe or not? Am I safe or not? Am I safe or not? And so as organisms, we are either feeling safe or we are not. There's nothing else. And that just simplified everything for me. Like at any point, any one of us could check in with our body and notice if we are feeling safe physiologically or not. And then once you know that, then you work with it. You figure out, you bring yourself back to safety. We do what animals do because that's who we really are. And so to me, that just has been the biggest light bulb. And I just geek out and I love sharing this with people like audiences. I've had people who remember my talks years later and continue to use what I tell them because it's so transformative. It's so different than how everybody else talks about stress.
I love what you just said. They're not bugs in the system. They're features, not to be overridden. That's
yes.
Powerful. Yeah. So tell us, how does this help? This knowledge, this knowing, how does it help us stress less and maybe even achieve our goals?
Absolutely. So that is what I speak about is how to stress less and achieve your goals. And here's how it helps. What I do is I tend to help people understand really how our operating system works. And I love to give examples of animals because we see animals all the time. So I love talking about how cats and dogs respond. I happen to live in Durham, North Carolina, behind a state park. So I see lots of deer in my backyard eating my hydrangeas. And I can observe all the features of what they are doing when they get triggered and then they come back to safety. They get triggered, they come back to safety. And what I teach my audiences and in workshops and things like that is the first thing is knowing when you are feeling physiological insafety. That is a really key fundamental thing because we're getting triggered all the time, whether we notice it or not. So it could either run us and then we're going to be reactivated and we're going to be running on fight, flight, freeze energy and cortisol and adrenaline, which a lot of us do. A lot of us who are very successful are constantly using the feel of cortisol, adrenaline, and glucose to get things done as if there's a tiger, but there isn't. It's just undone tasks or things I haven't figured out or expectations I have for myself, but they're not real death threats. So when I first teach this, I teach about how things like undone tasks feel like a tiger about to kill you to your body, because that's how we've been conditioned. We have been taught that in our society, we have to be really good at everything and not fail. Because if you fail, you're going to end up in the van down by the river, to quote Saturday Night Live. Chris Farley, right? And so when we really explore and pause, if we can do that first step of awareness, I'm feeling the agitation in my body right now. It's not even about the thought. Like you want to go to your body because physiologically, what drives our nervous system, as far as whether we're in fight, flight, freeze or not, it's the autonomic nervous system. It is the vagus nerve. It goes up and down, but the vagus nerve, 80% of it goes up, only 20% of it goes down. So you will get more bang for your buck if you start paying attention to how it feels when you're stressed out. So the first thing is get good at having awareness so you could notice it. You know, are your shoulders up to your ears? Are you tightening your jaw? And I usually like to give people this range of like, imagine 0 to 10, where when you're at a 10, I'm kind of gesturing with my hand where it starts to feel like, oh my God, I'm up to here. It's above my head. I'm drowning. And then the 0 is I'm lying in bed asleep, drooling because I'm so relaxed. I like to just let people know, like, start noticing when you're a 6 or above. And then the next step is once you are aware of it, I teach really simple, fast techniques that are going to reset the stress immediately. And there will be a link in the show notes where you can go access that video because it is fast. The total number, if you're going to do all of them, is 78 seconds. But once you know them, you could do them in like 5 seconds, 10 seconds. You can do them in the middle of a meeting with your boss. You can do them while you're presenting. You can do them in a difficult conversation with somebody. That is the tool. And these are all taken from science and biology and how we are designed to reset our stress. So first you notice it, then you reset it. And then once you've reset it, you can get back to what you're doing. Because now you could remind yourself, oh, wait a minute, is this really death? Is me not getting that project done by this time and the quality I think it should be going to cause the death of somebody? Unless you are working in a hospital, in the emergency room, probably not, right? And, you know, so one of the things I really train people, and in my talks, I give you such great examples of how you can pivot from that. And I like to say something about the 6 Ds. You get to decide yes on the thing that's stressing you out. That's the first D, but there's 5 others. You can delegate, you can downgrade the quality, you can defer, you can divide it up so you only do a little bit now and more later, or my favorite, you can delete it. Maybe you really don't need to do that thing and you can just be like, I'm not doing it. So that's how you end up stressing less and achieving your goals, because now you're getting to decide what actually matters to you and not be reacting to everything you think you should be doing. And I did want to mention one more thing because this is key. I know that your audience, you guys have talked a lot about celebration. Why is it important? This is the cornerstone of how to stress less and achieve your goals and truly transform, rewire your brain and your nervous system requires celebration. And I learned this from BJ Fogg from Stanford in his book, Tiny Habits. He talks about how when you want to change a habit, you first of all, you have to look for really tiny changes and then celebrate every time you implement a tiny change. The reason it has to be tiny is because otherwise it feels too stressful to our nervous system if we try to set a huge goal, right? So it could just be something really tiny, but you also have to celebrate because you're giving your brain dopamine, and that's a reward. It's like you're training the dog to, instead of ignoring the stress and trying to suppress it, you're training it to look at it and go like, oh, I'm not getting abused now if I pay attention to me being stressed. Now I'm getting a reward. So the first thing I teach people is when you notice you're stressed, say, yay me, I'm noticing. And then that starts building the habit of noticing. And then you start building the habit of celebrating, start building that habit. And so that's how people transform. It's not just like, oh, let me go take a bubble bath or take a 2-week vacation every so often. You can do this moment by moment by moment because that's how stress works. The power comes not from postponing it, but from noticing it as soon as you can and then getting on with it.
Absolutely. And creating that positive reinforcement for moving forward.
That's right.
So good. Thank you so much, Dr. Susie.
You are so welcome. And thank you all for listening. I hope you found value in this today. And thanks again for being committed to living your best life.
What will you take away from today's episode? Here are a few highlights that really stood out for me. First, stress is not a personal failure. Dr. Susie explains how society has taught us to see stress as weakness, but in reality, it's a survival mechanism embedded in our physiology. Understanding that stress is a feature, not a bug, allows us to stop fighting it and start working with it. Next, your nervous system holds the key. Learn how to recognize when your body is in a state of physiological stress, whether that be fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and use quick science-backed techniques to reset your nervous system in as little as 78 seconds. Small changes and celebration create big impact. We've talked a lot about that here. Discover the power of making tiny, manageable changes and celebrating them. Dr. Susie reminds us how positive reinforcement through celebration rewires your brain and nervous system to create resilience and long-term transformation. And finally, the 6 Ds to stress less. Don't let stress ruin your life. Use Dr. Susie's 6 Ds strategy. Decide, delegate, downgrade, defer, divide, or delete the tasks causing stress. These options help you prioritize what truly matters without overloading yourself. Dr. Susie shared so much wisdom today, and if you're ready to reset your stress, make sure you go to check out her simple, fast techniques to reset stress immediately. You'll find the details in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in to this incredible conversation with Dr. Susie Castellanos Hansley. I hope you're walking away with actionable tools to reset stress and a renewed perspective on how to work with it, not against it. Remember, stress isn't your enemy. It's a part of being human. And when you learn to befriend it, you unlock your potential to live your best life. If you'd like to bring Dr. Susie's wisdom to your team or organization, check out the links in the show notes for her contact info and speaker page. And don't forget, transformation begins with small steps. Celebrate each one, and you'll build a life of resilience, joy, and of course, self-trust. Until next time, keep trusting yourself and moving toward the life you deserve.
The best way to get what you want is to grow your self-trust. And the best way to grow your self-trust is in going after what you want the right way. And the Self-Trust Lab is here to help you do just that. With the proven 3E success method, you'll cultivate unshakable self-trust while making what you want inevitable through practical tools, personalized methods, and master-level coaching. Let's turn self-trust into your superpower and success into your everyday reality. Join us today at theselftrustcoach.com/the Self-Trust Lab.